Good morning, everybody. This is a live extreme weather briefing as we have Tropical Storm ETA that has been organizing and gradually intensifying on approach to central Cuba during the day today. Now has max sustained winds up to 50 miles an hour with the pressure dropping into the mid 990s. Latest hurricane recon shows that minimum pressure even estimated at below 995 millibars. Normally, I'd be preparing to head to South Florida to intercept this hurricane, but I woke up this morning with just some minor cold symptoms, so I'm trying to get a rapid coronavirus test around here somewhere so I get that negative result, just so I could consider my plans. Otherwise, I'm going to probably have to focus on live briefings like this through Tropical Cyclone ETA. And its likely landfall over South Florida on Monday morning. Right now, the current National Hurricane Center track has ETA approaching southeast Florida, really the upper Keys, maybe the Miami area, with max sustained winds of 65 miles an hour. So it does look like it is going to re-intensify. And that's with an upper level low that's approaching along the central Gulf Coast region. And that upper level low is going to lead to some difluence aloft over this system as it does this northwest turn in response to that. And that could actually lead to some further intensification above what some of the models are showing. But I was wondering if this could even become a hurricane before it reaches central Cuba, given the rate of intensification. But looks like the latest scans here show a little bit less in the way of convection right over the center, just some warming cloud tops there. That could be kind of a leveling off of that intensification trend that we've seen so far today as it's passing just to the north of the Cayman Islands, likely getting some decent westerlies into Grand Cayman today on the backside of this system. Probably some dry air too coming in, eroding the comma head that earlier today was really impressive right around the center. Definitely a warm core comma head there, showing an organization of this tropical storm as it's lifting northeast quite rapidly towards central Cuba. And normally if this was a stationary tropical cyclone, it'd be experiencing some pretty substantial southwest to northeast oriented wind shear. But because this thing's trucking along in a storm relative sense, it's really experiencing a pretty favorable environment for further intensification. And that's why the forecast track shows pretty limited weakening as it passes over central Cuba, maybe near the Trinidad, Cuba area, well to the east of Havana, and then maybe impacting portions of the western Bahama Islands as it's going to forecast to do a northwest turn up toward southern Florida. And Mike right now is tying up his boats. He lives in the Florida Keys, runs a snorkel outfit out there called Sundiver Tours, if you're ever in the Isla Morada area out there in the northern part of the Florida Keys. But he's tying up all of his boats out there, anticipating the arrival of windy conditions with Tropical Storm ETA. And again, the official National Hurricane Center track has an arrival on Monday morning, and then passing over the eastern Gulf again, and that could lead to a little bit of a leveling off of the intensity, but then it's going to start to experience some greater southwesterly wind shear with the arrival of that upper level low. And here you can see some weather reporting stations that Don is setting up for the Radar Omega app, and these are going to stream live weather conditions from Florida throughout the landfall here of Tropical Cyclone ETA. Probably going to be a tropical storm. Likely going to be impacts too around the Tampa Bay area, somewhere up along the west coast of Florida. There's going to be widespread impacts, some gusty winds, maybe some landfalling water spouts throughout the area, but we're going to be monitoring these live stations set up by the Radar Omega team there, with Don actually in position on the ground in western Florida already. And here you can see the tropical storm warning area. That's the area here in yellow. And only tropical storm warnings so far, no hurricane watches, and all the hurricane intensity models are showing sub-hurricane strength throughout the life cycle. But whenever you get an interaction of a tropical cyclone like this with an approaching upper level low, you never know if there could be kind of a carving out of a very favorable environment for intensification just downstream of that upper level low. Sometimes you can get some difluence aloft downstream, kind of like what we saw with Hurricane Zeta coming ashore as a Category 2 hurricane And I also have some more surgeonator data as well to show you some of that live data I'm going to share in a little bit. Here is the official National Hurricane Center track. And the good news is that there aren't any H's on this map, which means that it's going to, at least the National Hurricane Center is anticipating this to be a tropical storm throughout its life cycle. But definitely going to be life-threatening impacts with this, especially near just to the right of the center. We're going to get some onshore flow, coastal flooding, some dangerous storm surge. If I wasn't battling these very minor cold symptoms, I'd be out here deploying a network of surgeonator sensors up and down the southeastern coast of South Florida there to measure in real time the storm surge to the north of Eta. And it is going to do this northwest turn, and that's because there's an upper level low. It's further west back here, back in the lower Mississippi River Valley, down near Sabine Pass area, centered in that region, kind of a stagnant upper level low that is a relatively weak one too, so it's not going to have a ton of southwest to northeast shear. And in fact, I think that there could be more of a diffluent flow pattern aloft that could develop over Eta as it does this northwest turn, and that would lead to favorable conditions for further intensification on approach to South Florida. And right now, the National Hurricane Center has it making landfall with about 65 mile an hour sustained winds, so a strong tropical storm, but there is a good chance that it is going to remain below hurricane strength. But you never know with these systems that are interacting with an upper level low that's approaching from the west. Sometimes they can carve out an environment that is favorable for more rapid intensification than many of the models anticipate. But here you can see the tropical storm warnings that are in place in blue. Even the Bahamas are included as when this makes that turn to the northwest, an expanding wind field on the east side of this comma head shaped system. Does have some subtropical characteristics, some hybrid type characteristics, but really had a well-defined warm core in the convection in that comma head that rotated around a coupled low-level center with that convection. So still a pretty favorable tropical cyclone, at least for now, definitely, with Eta. And here are the intensity model for spread of the hurricane models and the global models as well. This is from tropicaltidbits.com. And the good news here is all those models really are below hurricane strength, basically maintaining tropical storm, but definitely intensifying into a pretty stout tropical storm as it comes in South Florida, likely on Monday morning. And the SHIP model is a pretty well-used model to track intensification, including the potential for rapid intensification, which is very low with Tropical Storm ETA. But it is forecast to be a pretty stout tropical storm when it comes in at about 55 knots there. But this is just guidance, just model guidance to give you an idea, and I use this for trends, and the trend is upward for a stronger system, at least today, now that it's become a tropical storm during the day today. It does have that classic comma head shape that you'd often see with these hybrid type storms, with a conveyor belt of convection just a little to the east of the center, and the low-level center is back here. And it was coupled with some deep convection earlier, but now you've got this conveyor belt of deeper convection off to the east, and often it'll wrap in a warm core of deep convection, and that's when this storm will intensify at its most rapid rate. When you have kind of a vertically stacked system from the low levels up through the mid levels and those convective hot towers over the center. But right now it's kind of got that leaning a bit toward that hybrid appearance with this conveyor belt of convection east of the low level center. It does have just a little bit of dry air coming in, some warming of the cloud tops over the center. That's probably just a little bit of a leveling off of the intensification trend today. But still, it's got max sustained winds of 50 miles an hour, 996 minimum pressure. The latest recon flight showed that it was probably even a little bit lower than that even. Here's some of that latest recon data from the incredible tropicaltidbits.com website. The red line there is the estimated mean sea level pressure, extrapolated pressure down to the sea surface, basically showing a sub 995 pressure there in the latest pass. So it still is intensifying beneath that warm core. Flight level winds also maximized They're with the latest pass up near about 55 knots on the east side of the center, near where that conveyor belt is just located to the east of that center. But definitely an organizing system shown by Hurricane Recon on approach to central Cuba. I was wondering if it even had a chance of reaching minimal hurricane strength before landfall here in central Cuba later on tonight. And then moving back over water to the southeast of Florida, between Cuba and Florida, very warm waters there. This is the GFS model, the 12Z GFS. And a blizzard is going to develop across western and northern Montana with a big-time surface low here. Lee cyclogenesis happening across the western Dakotas. 985 millibar low is going to lift into the Canadian prairies. And on the backside, the wraparound, look at how tight those isobars are on the northwest side of that low. Heavy snow too, 12 to 18 inches of snow. Blizzard warning up there. We're also going to be watching this across western and northern Montana. And if I wasn't watching ETA for a potential intercept, then I'd probably be up there covering that blizzard. But now with the development of these really minor cold symptoms, I think I'm just going to be doing weather briefings. But you've got two cyclones, very different types of cyclones, a tropical system, maybe a low-end hurricane across the upper Keys there on Monday morning. This is actually midnight Sunday, so a little faster solution indicated by the latest GFS. A big band, too, of rain, onshore flow here, coastal flooding and erosion happening well up the coast of Florida, as you're going to have an expanding wind field, basically a comma head with this system, ETA coming in here in the Keys. Probably going to have a lot, the worst impacts kind of displaced northward a little bit from the center. So West Palm Beach, Jupiter, some of these areas need to keep an eye out there in the west central Florida coast. The models are hinting at a pretty hefty convective band, well removed from the center of ETA. Could even be some embedded tornado potential there with that system. And then you've got this big cyclone reaching its peak intensity across the western Dakotas. So that's why the blizzard warning is in effect there. Big 1028 high coming in its wake. And the heaviest snow lifts a little bit further north of Sean, where you could get some blizzard conditions there in Melville, Saskatchewan, where Dominator 3 is located. But the isobars aren't quite as tight as they were on Sunday across north central Montana, where that blizzard warning is in effect. That includes locations like Cut Bank, Great Falls, Havre, Montana areas there are included in that blizzard warning, and that is also includes portions of southwestern Saskatchewan there too, Sunday into Monday morning. And then that system ejects, basically an occlusion happening, and then a new surface low will form as this system lifts to the northeast and de-amplifies, lifting up and over this monster subtropical high. But just a high enough amplitude to recurve ETA to the northeast back across the Florida Peninsula the early portion of next week, the timing of which is still pretty uncertain. Probably as a subtropical hybrid system, but this is Monday evening, heading pretty far to the west into the southeastern Gulf, where there's still some pretty warm waters, sufficient to maintain a tropical cyclone. Could even be a pretty decent re-intensification there into the eastern Gulf of Mexico before curling back on Tuesday night into Wednesday, possibly curling back toward Florida. Just meandering out there over the eastern Gulf of Mexico until the middle part of next week, at least is being indicated by this latest GFS on the pivotalweather.com website here. Great website for model visualization. And there's going to be some problems with surge on the south side of this center with persistent onshore flow across multiple tidal cycles there in Tampa through the middle to even later portion of next week. Gradual weakening, though, of this system as it sits over the same area, drifting further north, eventually into the northeastern Gulf of Mexico. Lower oceanic heat content, some drier air getting entrained into this system. It's just kind of late in the year, too. Usually you do get more of these subtropical hybrid type systems out here, but really the GFS model has ETA just sitting in the eastern Gulf of Mexico all week next week, and not turning to the northeast back across the Florida Peninsula, but just spinning down out over the eastern Gulf. Meandering very close, though, to the west coast of Florida, causing some problems. Coastal flooding out there as well. I would guess that the GFS, the European model probably doesn't show quite that unusual of a pattern. Probably shows a curve to the northeast along with this weakening trough shearing out over that subtropical ridge dominating the mid-Atlantic zone. See what the European model shows. This is probably the 0Z one. So the European model does show a westward drift as well of ETA into the eastern Gulf of Mexico through the middle portion of next week. Actually intensifying a bit too there in the eastern Gulf of Mexico Thursday evening, and then starting to weaken as it moves over that lower oceanic heat content over the northeastern Gulf of Mexico through the later portion of next week. But really the European model and GFS model are in agreement with ETA just meandering here over the eastern Gulf of Mexico, eventually making landfall, but really blocked by this persistent ridging over the eastern United States, and especially this subtropical ridge, but following a bit of a weakness there in between these two anticyclones. Making landfall as a much weaker tropical system there, just a little bird fart of a vortex. As yet another upper level system is forecast to dive deep south over the Four Corners region, likely bringing more snow for much of the Rocky Mountains, much of the Mountain West. Another system here moving into the Pacific Northwest toward the end of next week as well. But really ETA kind of coming ashore here in the northeastern Gulf as more of a bird fart of a tropical system, but meandering all next week over the eastern Gulf of Mexico. And then look at this system. We're going to have to watch this for severe weather across the southern plains, Dixie Alley, reaching a neutral, if not a negative tilt, as it's starting to move over the southern plains around the 14th, 15th of November. Definitely have to keep an eye on this for severe weather across the southern plains. Maybe in Dixie Alley, but likely this system will shear out and weaken over top this persistent subtropical ridge from the mid-Atlantic and off into the western Atlantic there. Look at it. Just shear out and weaken, lift up toward the northern Great Lakes, and eventually up over Hudson Bay. But just a anticyclone just dominating here over the southeastern U.S., mid-Atlantic, down into the Gulf of Mexico. And I think that's what we're going to see probably all winter long, are these systems diving in from the Pacific Northwest, bottoming out over the Four Corners, dropping quite a bit of snow for a great ski season, hopefully across Colorado, portions of the Central Rockies. But then these systems will shear out before they reach the eastern U.S. Not a very good nor'easter pattern for the Northeast for weather enthusiasts and snow enthusiasts out there for the early part of the winter. Western Great Lakes could get some decent lake effect out of this, but it looks like a warm pattern for most of the eastern U.S. in the long term, with a cold pattern banked up against the mountains, snowy and cold for the Mountain West, but we deserve it out there after how hot and dry it's been through most of the summer into the early fall. So back to ETA again. It does look like there's some more cooling of the cloud top. Oh, no, there's the new satellite image. So just a bit of some warming of those cloud tops happening. There is some convection being indicated here closer to the center. Definitely an expansion of this system, increasing in size. Definitely looks way better organized on satellite, hence the upgrade to Tropical Storm. And the latest Hurricane Hunter aircraft showing an intensifying organizing system. Nice comma head here on the backside. A lot of latent heat release too from these convective towers, hot towers that are located near the center. So even though the infrared shows this kind of conveyor belt a little east of the center dominating, you can see on visible satellite that there's plenty of convection still over the center of the storm within that comma head that really resulted in the upgrade of this system into a tropical storm. There's a lot of convection, well-organized convection over the low-level center, vertically stacked system, and that's why it's definitely a tropical cyclone, a tropical storm right now. But I think that this conveyor belt will kind of feed this system with convection that'll get wrapped into the comma head and keep leading to pressure falls and intensification on approach to central Cuba here, and then turning to the northwest over the warm waters between Florida and Cuba out here, and further intensification is anticipated on approach to South Florida by Monday morning. Maybe even a Cat 1 hurricane is in the cards, but there are no hurricane watches, only a tropical storm warning out here for the Florida Keys and South Florida. Tropical storm watches further north, where the models are showing a pretty persistent convective band, and probably the worst conditions with this system are going to get displaced from the center a little bit. So these areas here further north across South Florida definitely could get deteriorating conditions Monday morning. And then a meandering tropical cyclone over the eastern Gulf of Mexico is indicated. So now I want to show you quickly some of the surginator data that we collected from Hurricane Eta down in Venice. And this is just the Venice location. We're able to pull off more data from the flash drive there that stores the data directly on the surginator sensor itself. So we're pulling off data all the time, working on that. And this is from Surginator 3 that was deployed at Cypress Cove Marina in Venice. You can see a lot of wave action as that storm surge is increasing, and then a nonlinear decrease, rapid decrease of that storm surge, more wave action, kind of a false sense of security here with this storm surge dropping to almost zero. And then some back surge coming in off the Mississippi River here, dangerous back surge, even up near 4 feet above normal tidal levels. And this is as our production vehicles were trying to leave Venice when this dangerous back surge came back in, nearly swamped a couple of the rental vehicles as well. This happening over the course of an hour or two, but a pretty rapid rise in the storm surge up to a peak of about 6 feet at Cypress Cove Marina. And Surginator 2 that was deployed about 20 miles to the north of this location near the Buras, Louisiana location, measured a storm surge of about 10 to 15 feet, with the wave action maximized near the peak of the storm surge and the salinity jumping up to about 50%, whereas with in Venice, most of it was a freshwater storm surge, likely some piling up of that water up into the Mississippi River, really a Mississippi River dominated storm surge here with the salinity. Flat line down here showing mainly a freshwater storm surge, but this 1 second data, unprecedented resolution storm surge data and streamed live, shows the wave action ramping up and really shows the complex nature of the storm surge. A little bit of wave action and chop at the peak of the surge here at Cypress Cove Marina, as the hotel was getting flooded there in the marina as well. That same marina was hammered by Hurricane Katrina back in 2005, and there's actually a report of a tugboat that passed right by the Cypress Cove Hotel there, and they thought they were in the middle of the Gulf of Mexico, but the only way that they were able to tell where they were is that they were seeing the very peak of the hotel, the very top of the roof peak, just peaking just above the storm surge, and they knew that they were actually pushed inland over the Venice area as they were trying to ride out the dangerous storm surge from Hurricane Katrina. And here you can see some more wave action as that storm surge subsided just a little bit, and then this dangerous back surge that came in on the backside of the hurricane. But interestingly, when the water would recede, that's when you get the biggest waves measured by the Surginator sensor at this location, where the opposite was true in the Buras location with monster wave action at the peak of the surge, a very destructive surge right off the Gulf of Mexico as that water was getting piled up against the levee there in Venice and Plaquemine Parish. But I'm going to keep sharing this data measured by the Surginators. I'm still hoping I can get a rapid test today, get that negative result, because I have really minor cold symptoms. And then I could intercept this Tropical Storm ETA down in southeastern Florida. Either way, though, Mike is going to intercept it, even though his the due date for his baby is November 8th. So basically, any day now, he's going to be welcoming a new baby to the world, a new storm chaser. Jordan Tice is going to be probably born, maybe encouraged by the pressure fall of this approaching storm system, moving right over his location here on Monday morning. in the upper Keys. So I'm likely going to be tracking this system through satellite and these live briefings, so be sure to stay tuned to these briefings. But here you can see this comet head pretty organized on visible satellite. Conveyor belt of convection here. A lot of convection as well, stacked over that low level center. Just a well-defined tropical system that, who knows, if this trend continues, could even be a low-end hurricane when it comes into central Cuba. So more updates to come. Thank you everybody for joining me. Hope you enjoy my weather reports. Never stop chasing. Except unless you have certain safety precautions to follow.